Okay, hey guys. So this is a very different story time for me. And I'm having a lot of trouble even just getting through the opening just because I feel super uncomfortable. Some of this information goes back over 10 years, and knowing what I know now, it's kind of hard to think back to these times. And I'm really fortunate and lucky that things turned out the way that they did, that I'm safe, that I'm a grown woman now. And, you know, that being said, there have been some really weird things happening with this particular situation. Sorry, I have like coffee. I'm all prepped. By the way, do you guys like my Halloween nails? I think they're like really fun and festive. So this story is not one that I ever thought I was gonna tell. And I knew I was going to tell it when my house got broken into, maybe like right before my dad died. So it was literally the day before my dad passed away. So the last day of September, my house got broken into, and I was gonna tell that story time, and I was gonna tell this story time, and then my dad passed. And as you guys know, things have just been crazy. So something happened last night for the first time since my dad really passed away. With this situation, I was like, you know what? It's time to make a story time about this. It's time to like put this out there, because as much as it's freaking me out for sure, I do think it's interesting and maybe also will really help you guys in terms of like internet safety, you know what I mean? Because definitely when I was 13, when this whole situation started, this individual has a lot of information about me because I wasn't smart on the internet. I'm just going to tell you about the guy who's been stalking me since I was 13 and who has catfished me for over 10 years. Yeah, this is gonna be interesting. Before we get into this is going to be an extremely long story. I still don't know how I'm gonna divide this up, but I think the only place that I can really start is the very beginning, and then we can get into how this has evolved, how this individual, this man, has kind of changed since this whole thing started. This was back in the MySpace days, and this was back when I so desperately wanted to be MySpace famous. I don't know what was wrong with me. And back then, MySpace famous was like having, you know, thousands of friends and like all of these people to comment on your pictures, and it was like very big in the scene, community, and crowd to be like MySpace famous. I mean, you guys know how it is. So that was like my goal back then. And at one point, I was sick and home from school, and I don't remember, I didn't have mono because I got mono when I was 16, so I was sick with something else, and I don't remember what, but I know that I was home from school for a considerable amount of time. When I was home from school at this time, I was so bored. And so I was adding people on MySpace. I spent like all of my day on MySpace, or all of my days on MySpace when I was sick during this time period, and like editing my amazing quality photos. Now they were like so terrible. I actually tried to log into my MySpace the other day for like the how I used to do my makeup in high school challenge to like get evidence photos, and I can't log in anymore. But anyways, so yeah, this was like when all I would do was spend my time on MySpace. So I'm adding people, I'm checking people out, I'm commenting on people's photos, I'm, you know, doing follow for follow and sign for sign and all of that kind of crap. And there was this guy who we're gonna call Jake. And Jake was pretty cute when I added him. I guess he found me through comments that I had left on this other girl's photos, or maybe we did signs for each other back then. That was when like basically like you would hold up like pieces of paper that you wrote each other's usernames on, and it was like internet friends way of being like, I don't know, it was it was all of our way of making ourselves feel a lot more famous and important than we were at all. So I think that was how he found me, because this girl comes into play later. And he had added me, and he was pretty cute, so I added him, and I kind of like went through his photos, and he, I think at the time, was like 16 according to his MySpace, and he only had a handful of pictures. They were all pretty bad quality. There were only like 4 of them, and all of his other photos were edits that he had made for other people on MySpace. And now this should have been a huge red flag, but keep in mind I was like 13, so you know, it wasn't a thing that was in my head. So Jake and I started talking that week when I was home sick from school. We talked about pretty much everything. I mean, it started out the way that I would talk to anyone else, but the conversations got a lot deeper than they did with anyone else, like over time, because we wound up being friends for so long. So it started off that he thought I was really pretty, how he wanted to make me like a edit, and I was like, yeah, that would be so awesome. If you wanted to make me an edit, I could make you a sign with your name on it and stuff like that. Like, this was currency back in MySpace days. And so we kind of became friends because of that, and he would edit my photos for me all the time. And just like, I would show some of them, but I really don't want anyone to figure out who he is, you know what I mean? Like, that's why I'm really scared to show anything, because I don't want anyone to figure out who he is. I don't want him to watch this and get angry or whatever, because you guys will see later, like, the whole thing turned really dangerous really fast. So he would make me edits of all of my like really crappy MySpace selfies. And this continued for a few years, and as you know, it went from just being like edits and signs for each other, it went more so to like, I don't know, we would talk about like really serious stuff, about like boy problems, about family problems, about how I didn't feel good enough, I felt bad about my body, like all of this stuff. I told him a lot of stuff, you know what I mean? And he was always there for me to talk to, but looking back, I realized we were never talking. He was just like literally listening to me talk. But there were a couple of things that really stood out in this time frame. He would tell me how pretty I was pretty much every single day. And I mean, that's really nice, but simultaneously, like, I was really young. I was probably like 14 or 15 at this time frame that we had been talking for a while, and he still told me how beautiful I was, how pretty I was, like every single day. And it was extremely flattering, extremely nice, but like it went from just that to like, don't date any boys. There was this whole thing where he told me like boys would corrupt me, and it just seemed like a strange way for like a, I guess then like 17, 18-year-old to be talking to me, you know? And so it was weird. And whatever it was, I still talked to him. I still thought, you know, like he had my interests in mind. Another thing was he would get really jealous when I would post pictures with guys. And I will say I probably took more photos during my high school career than any other human being on planet Earth. Like, I documented my upbringing so extremely well. My kids will have no problems knowing what their mom was up to. Like, I took selfies with everything and anyone, and just, I was crazy. I loved pictures. My dad had bought me this really, like, at the time it was so nice, but it was like a fake DSLR. It was just like a digital camera, but it was a Nikon one that looked like a DSLR, and so I thought it was so great. I thought it was so queen of photography. I had a lot of pictures on my MySpace. And he would get really jealous when I would post with these guys. And it wasn't like we ever dated or we ever talked as more than friends or anything like that. Like, I knew that much not to do online, or to never have, like, I don't know, I was so wrapped up in boy problems in my day-to-day. So obviously I wasn't talking to him like that, but like, he would get really jealous when I would post with these guys, and he would just freak out on me. He would be like, so who's this, who's this, who's this? Are they, you know, just your friend, this and that? And I kind of like, I always thought it was sort of cute because he was just looking out for me. I remember there was this one time where someone else made an edit for me on MySpace, and he lost his mind and like messaged the person and was saying how like they needed to take it down. He was the only one who could make edits for me. It was just real weird, and definitely showed what was gonna be happening sooner. I'm sorry if I'm like smiling in the first part of this. This part just seems really funny to me now. You know what I mean? Like, the whole thing seems so stupid and funny. But at the time, you know, it was pretty nerve-wracking. So that happened, and eventually MySpace was the ish. And Facebook was the ish. So everyone was making the jump from MySpace to Facebook, and I finally did the damn thing. And I obviously wasn't super, like, talkative on MySpace. Like, I was never active on MySpace anymore. And I was kind of over that whole, like, I need to have followers on MySpace to feel, I don't know, like, good about myself. So Jake and I really weren't talking anymore. And I remember maybe it was like, I don't know, a year or so later, maybe it was just a couple of months later, he would disappear and he would come back. And this is like a reoccurring thing for Jake. So he wound up finding me on like Facebook, and he added me. And so I would have been about 16 at this time. And so I added him on Facebook, and we started talking again, and I was in a really horrible place with like an eating disorder. I had just broken up with like my long-term boyfriend. I was kind of in shambles, so I started talking to him again. It was the same thing. He started making like edits for me again, which was kind of weird at this point. Like, no one really did that for each other in like Facebook days, you know? But we would talk, and I would spill all my secrets and whatever, but it felt kind of weird this time because I knew how possessive and how creepy he'd been. Even though I was really young, obviously, like, it kind of creeped me out. And I remember one day going to his Facebook, and I hadn't really like gone through his page before, and I realized he really only had a couple of friends, and they were all people that I knew on MySpace. There was no one from like his personal life. There were the same 4 photos from MySpace as like his profile pictures. And it was really strange. And as I started like looking at them, I was like, you know, these are like old photos. They were really bad quality. I don't know, just none of them were or had been updated in over 2 years at this point. And I thought it was weird, but I kind of like brushed it off because he was so nice to me, this and that. And then it went from like us having really good conversations to like him getting really possessive again really, really quick. Also at this point, his age on Facebook was 18, which was a little bit behind what he should have been. I was 16 at this point, so he should have been like 19 going into 20 or something like that, but he was still 18 on Facebook. And anyways, so I would post photos with guys and he would get really weird again and he would ask who these people were. He would tell me not to date anyone. Boys are gonna corrupt me. Like boys will, I don't know, he would talk about how perfect and how pure I was and how like boys would like soil me. This was the kind of language, the way that this person talked, you know? And so I thought it was really strange, and then he started reaching out to my guy friends that I would post with and like threatening them and saying things like, if you date Loey, if you corrupt her, like I'll find you, like I'll kick your ass. Like it was really weird. And like my friends would come up to me at school and be like, hey, who is this guy? Are you guys dating? Because he seems psycho. And I was like, holy crap. So when I realized this was happening, I kind of like came to him and I was just like, hey, chill out. And he didn't chill out. And it would just be this thing where every conversation that we had was about how perfect and pure and pretty I was, and how I remember one time he told me he never wanted me to grow up, and it was really weird. And again, that comes into play a little bit later. So yeah, he just started like freaking me out pretty bad. And it got to the point where I just stopped answering messages. I think this was probably right around when I was 17. I'd really grown out of the phase of like just talking to people online. Like I had a pretty solid group of friends. I was recovering from an eating disorder. Like I was in a better place than I was when we first started talking, and I was in a better place than I was when we started talking again when I was 16. And so I had really backed off. Like I kind of ignored his messages. We just didn't talk anymore. And he didn't really bother me. Like he would send me messages asking how I was. I wouldn't respond. He would follow up maybe once or twice and then he would leave me alone for a couple of months. So we just kind of stopped talking. Sometimes he would like my photos. I remember there was this one time where he got my number, and I don't know how because it wasn't on Facebook. And also my number at the time wouldn't have been under the name, like my name that I had on Facebook and stuff like that. Like it was under my parents, not under me. And so I don't know how he found it, but he found my number and he texted me, and then he would text me a lot. Just the same sort of stuff he'd been saying since I was 13. You're so pretty, you're so pure, like don't let boys corrupt you. Like, I don't know, it was weird. Fast forward to right around when YouTube started like taking off for me, when I first had like my very first viral video. So I guess that would have been like 2014. I would have been 20, maybe 21 at this point. And so we hadn't talked in a really long time. He was still on like my Facebook friends list, but like I don't remember when the last time we would have talked at this point. He kind of lost interest in me when I just didn't respond to him ever. And I had changed my number since like he had found it. So he wasn't able to text me anymore. And this girl that I knew from MySpace days, the one that he originally, I think, found me through, because it was one of our only, I think it was our only mutual friend on Facebook as well. So that's the only person I can think that he found me through. And I'm gonna call her Kate. She sent me a message just saying, I'm so proud of you on YouTube and stuff like that, like this and that, this and that. And then she said, but I do have a question for you. And I was like, yeah, what's up? And she said, are you still friends with Jake? And I said, I think I'm still friends with him on Facebook. We haven't talked in a few years. Why? Like he started getting really weird on me. And she told me that I guess, because we had never really like spoken before this, Kate and I, like we've always like liked each other's selfies and stuff like that. But like, and I mean, we followed each other's lives but we never had like a real conversation. She wound up telling me that the whole thing with Jake was really sketchy and how she didn't think he was who he said he was. One time, he asked if he could call her. It was the same thing, like constantly talking to her about boys and how she shouldn't date them and this and that. I forgot to mention, Jake used to write poems about me, and apparently he wrote Kate a song and he wanted to sing it to her. And so they get on the phone because they've been, again, like MySpace, like internet friends for years. And when they get on the phone, Kate notices that his voice is really like deep and gravelly, and not in the way that like some people just naturally have really deep voices, i.e. like Corpse Husband is a literal fetus and he has the deepest voice on planet Earth. But like he sounded crackly and he sounded, I don't know how to explain it, but the way that she explained it was just that he sounded old, and I understood what she meant by that. They had known each other even longer than I had, and he had been 16 for longer than a year then too. So he had been lying about his age for a while. And actually right after this, I wound up going on Facebook to unfriend him and like block him and stuff because I didn't want him to see my stuff anymore. And he was still 18 at this time. So he clearly wasn't the age that he said he was. I can't put you on there because you have your nipples.
I can see you.
Public nudity. You're making me unpure. So like Kate point blank asked him, how old are you really? And not in like a confronting sort of way, but like in a jokey way, because she knew he wasn't 18. She knew like they weren't the same age, like he sounded older, and she's so like nice and chill, and I know that it wouldn't have bothered her if he had just been like, oh, I'm like 30, but you know, like she wanted to know the truth. And it was like a switch went off in this guy. Cussed her out on the phone, like called her a and like the C word, and like was talking about what like a little brat she was, like asking him that when he just wanted to sing her his song. All he'd ever done was look out for her, and this was how she repaid him. Like all of this weird stuff. And just like lost it on her, was like screaming at her on the phone. She freaked out, hung up, went to go and block him on MySpace, or Facebook rather, and he had already blocked her by the time that she got to her computer, and she said it was like lightning fast. So she had just kind of wanted to warn me like, hey, he's not who he says he is. And at this point, like, it just kind of weirded me out, like after that I had him on my Facebook friends list. We hadn't talked in a while, but I didn't want him to be able to see my stuff. So I went to unfriend him and I blocked him and stuff. And I did see on his Facebook, he still had the same 4 freaking pictures that he'd had for like, oh my God, almost 7 years. Yeah, literally like 7, 8 years at this point. He never updated his status. He never listed where he worked. He never did anything but post edits of these like really young girls. And so I unfriended him, and it really wasn't too long after that I wound up getting a Facebook friend request from a new page with his name on it. And I denied it because I thought it was really freaking weird. And I got a message from him, or like a message request or whatever from this new page saying, so we're not friends anymore. And I saw it, but I didn't respond. And he like messaged me again, and he was like, so we're not friends anymore? And I ignored it again. And then that was when he lost it on me, and it was like, F you, you ungrateful, like horrible, horrible, horrible words he called me. Just like every bad, terrible phrase you can think of. And was just telling me what an ungrateful person I was, how terrible I was. He'd been such a good friend to me for so long. Like, how could I not accept his Facebook friend request? And I was just like, I'm gonna die, help. So I blocked him again on that Facebook page. He made another one. He tried to add me under the same name. I ignored him. That was when I started getting Facebook friend requests from people who had no mutual friends with me. And YouTube had kind of started taking off, but this wasn't like subscribers, you know what I mean? It was like guys with no pictures aside from one, and they would have very generic names like Tom Smith, like, you know what I mean? And they would message me when I would deny their friend request, and they would just be like, hey, how are you? Hey, how are you? And it was just like a bunch of these would come in at random spurts, and I would just ignore them every single time. Because clearly I have a better understanding of internet safety at this moment in time. And then that was when one of them tried to add me, and he had the same profile picture, I remember, as one that had tried to add me before, and so I ignored it again. And he messaged me and he said, why aren't you friends with Jake? I almost just said his real name. Why aren't you friends with Jake? And I didn't message back, but I blocked him because that was freaking weird. Another page popped up the next day. Why aren't you responding? Why won't you add me? And I ignored it again and I blocked it. And then that was when I got another Facebook friend request from a page under his name with the same photo, like, why aren't we friends? And I was just like, oh shit. Like, it was him the whole time. He was making all of these pages, like, trying to get me to add him back so that he could continue like spying on my freaking life and following everything that I do. There was even a point in time that I got a YouTube message, so he knew about my channel, and he probably still knows about my channel, obviously. I'm so glad I got to watch you grow up. And knowing that this is a man who very clearly has lied about his age, that's probably not even him in his photos, and if it is, like, he won't post any new ones, and he hasn't in almost 8-9 years. It just really freaked me out. Like, why would anyone say that they're glad they got to watch me grow up? That's not what anyone says, you know what I mean? That's what, like, adults say to us, like our teachers and our parents and stuff will say to us, but not like people our age, you know what I mean? And so it was really creepy. I wound up blocking him on YouTube. He would try to contact me every once in a while. I would get those bots every once in a while. And it just was really weird. And this video isn't really gonna have a climax because the second part of this, part 2, where someone broke into my house and everything is just correlated here. So I will put that video out really soon, but kind of like my end thing here is because I wasn't smart in the beginning on the internet, which I don't think any of us are, this person has my information for the rest of his life. He can find me on any social media outlet and he can find me on YouTube, and he's literally followed me for 10 years and I don't even know who this person is. I don't know what his intentions are. I don't think that they're good anymore. Everything about this was so weird, and I just want to like really tell you guys who are really young, because I know I have a lot of really young subscribers, just not to accept friend requests anywhere from people you don't know. It's really awesome because we live in this kind of like era where fandoms are a thing and people from different fandoms will have so many conversations on Twitter and whatnot. And that's so cool. I think it's awesome to make friends online, but at the same time, like, just be really careful. And you guys are smart and I know you will be really careful. I just wanted to kind of like put this out there, let you know my story, because it's really creepy and I still get message requests and messages from this person. Next up, I will tell you the break-in story. So sorry to leave you on a cliffhanger. When it's up, I will link it down below as well as right here. And yeah, I love you guys so much. If you enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.